Hello everybody, this is Refresh, and I'm here to bring you a battle between two Theros Beyond Death sealed decks. Over here we have a Selesnya deck, and over there we have a Gruul deck. These decks were built in previous videos, and you can find the links to those below. We'll go ahead and get started by rolling dice to see who goes first. Selesnya rolls a 3. Gruul rolls an 8. Gruul will choose to go first. Gruul draws a forest, a mountain, Wolf Willow Haven, Final Flare, Nylea's Huntmaster, and Temple of Abandon. I don't love this hand because it's kind of slow. However, the Wolf Willow Haven will get us faster into Nylea's Huntmaster, and the Temple of Abandon can scry away extra lands, and so we will keep this hand. Selesnya draws a Hyrax Tower Scout, a Plains, Reverent Hoplite, Sentinel's Eyes, Daybreak Chimera, Voracious Typhon, and Plains. I don't really like this hand because it's a bit slow and we lack green mana, and so we're gonna mulligan this. Selesnya draws a Moss Viper, Transcendent Envoy, Taranika, a Crowan Veteran, Revoke Existence, Reverent Hoplite, Nyxborn Courser, and Sentinel's Eyes. Now there are 0 lands, so again we can't keep this. We'll mulligan and go down to 5. Now we have a Nessian Wanderer, a Forest, Return to Nature, Nyxborn Courser, Reverent Hoplite, Forest, and Temple of Plenty. We're going to keep this because we have all of our colors, and we have some things that we can play. We're going to take the Return to Nature and stick that on the bottom, and we will take the 5 mana Reverent Hoplite and stick that on the bottom as well. Gruul will begin by playing the Temple of Abandon. It is a land. It says enters the battlefield tapped, and when it enters the battlefield, scry 1. You can tap it to add red or green. It'll enter the battlefield tapped and we'll scry. We'll take the Skull of Grove Dancer and we'll leave it on top because that's a decent first to play. And then Gruul will pass the turn. Selesnya will draw. We get a Hyrax Tower Scout, not a bad pick here. We'll take the Temple of Plenty and we'll play that. It enters the battlefield tapped, and when it enters the battlefield, scry 1. You can tap it to add green or white. Go ahead and scry. We have a Moss Viper, which, plays fine with what we have here. We don't have anything to cast the Nyxborn Courser, but we have a 3-drop and a 2-drop, and I think that is fine. And then Selesnya will pass the turn. Gruul untaps. Draws, gets a Skull of Grove Dancer. Go ahead and play a Forest now. And we will tap the Temple of Abandon for green and the Forest for green. And we will play the Skull of Grove Dancer. This is a 2/2 enchantment Satyr Druid. Whenever a land is put into your graveyard from anywhere, you gain 1 life. And you can pay 2 green, put the top card of your library into your graveyard. It's basically a 2/2 enchantment for us. And then Gruul will pass the turn. Selesnya untaps. Draws and gets the Moss Viper. We'll play a Forest, and then we will tap the Temple of Plenty for green and the Forest, and we'll play the Nessian Wanderer. This is a 1/3 Satyr Scout with Constellation. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may reveal a land card from among them and put that card into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. And then Selesnya will pass the turn. Gruul untaps. Draws, gets a mountain. We'll play the mountain, and then we don't have a way to attack through the Nessian Wanderer, so we will instead tap the Forest and the Temple of Abandon, and we'll play the Wolf Willow Haven. This is a enchantment aura, and enchants land. Whenever enchanted land is tapped for a mana, its controller adds an additional green, and you can pay 4 green, sacrifice it to create a 2/2 green wolf creature token. Activate this ability only during your turn. And then we will pass the turn. Selesnya untaps. Draws. We have a Forest. We'll play the Forest. There's no reason to attack the Nessian Wanderer, so instead we'll tap 3 mana here, and we will play the Hyrax Tower Scout. This is a 3/3 human scout. When it enters the battlefield, untap target creature. There's no creature to untap, so we'll just target the Nessian Wanderer and it will stay untapped. And then Selesnya will pass the turn. Gruul untaps. Draws, gets an Oread of Mountain's Blaze. We'll go ahead and play another mountain. We have 5 mana now, so I think casting the Huntmaster and giving it its power boost is probably worthwhile. So we will tap 4 mana. And then we'll cast Nylea's Huntmaster. This is a 4/3 Centaur Shaman. When it enters the battlefield, target you control gets +X/+O until end of turn, where X is your devotion to green. This will target the Skola Grove Dancer, so it'll become a 4/2 because there are 2 green symbols here. We'll attack with the 4/2 Skola Grove Dancer. Selesnya, seeing that it's just a one-time effect, will go ahead and take the 4 and go down to 16. Then Gruul will pass the turn. Selesnya untaps, draws, gets a forest, will play the forest. Selesnya is on the defense right now, and Selesnya has a Moss Viper. Knowing that we can block with that, we will attack with the Hyrax Tower Scout. Gruul does not think it is a good trade to trade with the Huntmaster, and seeing that we can attack next turn, we will go ahead and take the 3 and go to 17. And flooding out, Selesnya will tap the forest and play the Moss Viper. This is a 1/1 snake with Death Touch, and then Selesnya will pass the turn. Gruul untaps, draws, gets a Flummoxed Cyclops. Gruul will play the mountain over here. We don't really have a good way to attack at the moment, so Gruul will just tap 4 and play the Flummoxed Cyclops. This is a 4/4 Cyclops with reach. Whenever 2 or more creatures your opponents control attack, Flummoxed Cyclops can't block this combat. We don't really have a good way in, so we'll just go ahead and play the last card. Tapping the Temple of the Banner for red, we'll play the Oread of Mountain's Blaze. It's a 1/3 enchantment nymph, and for 2 in red, you can discard a card to draw a card. And then Gruul will pass the turn. Selesnya untaps, draws, gets another forest. We'll play the other forest, and now we are on the defense here, and so Selesnya will pass the turn. Gruul untaps, Gruul draws, gets a Skofus War Leader. Knowing that we have a Skofus War Leader, I think we just play that, and then we wait for the following turn to use the Final Flare to sacrifice a Wolfwillow Haven and get an attack. So we'll go ahead and tap 5 and play the Skofus War Leader. This is a 4/5 Minotaur Warrior, and you can pay red, sacrifice another creature or enchantment. Skofus War Leader gets +1/+0 and Menace until end of turn. We will pass on attacking for this turn, and Gruul will pass the turn. Selesnya draws and gets another forest, flooding out continually. And just with forest, we'll play the forest, and then Selesnya will pass the turn again. Gruul untaps, Gruul draws, gets a forest, which we don't really need now. So we'll tap 3 mana, and then we'll cast Final Flare. And it is an instant. It says, as an additional cost to cast a spell, sacrifice a creature or enchantment. We'll sacrifice the Wolfwillow Haven. And Final Flare deals 5 damage to target creature. We'll target the Moss Viper. Moss Viper dies. And then we'll go to combat. We'll attack with the Huntmaster, the Cyclops, and the Skofus War Leader. I think the best value that we can get is to take out the Flummoxed Cyclops, which will remove a 4-power attacker with 4 defense, and we'll only lose one of these. So we'll double block with the Hyrax Tower Scout and the Nessian Wanderer against that. Gruul will order the blocks so that the Tower Scout dies first. So we'll trade the Tower Scout for the Flummoxed Cyclops, and we'll take 8 damage to go down to 8. The Hyrax Tower Scout dies. The Flummoxed Cyclops dies. And then Gruul will pass the turn. Selesnya draws and gets a Plains. The flood continues. We'll go ahead and play the Plains. We'll tap both the Plains and the Temple of Plenty for white, and tap 1 more green mana to play the Nyxborn Courser. This is a 2/4 enchantment Centaur Scout. And as it enters the battlefield, the constellation on the Nessian Wanderer will trigger. We will look at the top 3 cards of our library. We have a Plains, a Captivating Unicorn, and Taranika, a Chroman Veteran. We can reveal the Plains and put it into our hand, and then we'll put the rest on bottom in a random order. And then Selesnya will pass the turn. At the end of Selesnya's turn, Gruul will tap all 3 remaining mana. We'll use the Oread of Mountain's Blaze's ability to discard a card, which will be this force to draw a card. We drew a mountain, and then we'll untap. We'll draw a Skofus War Leader. We will go to combat yet again, and we will attack with the War Leader, the Huntmaster. And we are going to try to get on the trade here, so we'll put the Courser and the Nessian Wanderer against the Huntmaster. We'll take 4 from the Skofus War Leader. Gruul will put most of the damage into the Courser, so the Courser will die, and we'll trade with the Huntmaster. We'll take 4 from the Scophus War Leader to go down to 4. Gruul loses the Huntmaster, but we are going to pour on the aggression here by tapping all the remaining mana and playing another Scophus War Leader, and then Gruul will pass the turn. Selesnya untaps, draws a Revoke Existence. This is unfortunately not very useful against my opponent's deck. We will play the Revealed Plains, and we will tap the Plains in the Forest and Revoke Existence, targeting the Skola Grove Dancer. It is a sorcery. It says exile target artifact or enchantment. The Grove Dancer is exiled, and then Selesnya will pass the turn. Gruul untaps, draws, gets a forest. We'll play the forest and we'll go to combat. We'll attack with the Oread and both of the Scophos War Leaders. Selesnya will chump one of the War Leaders and then die to 5 damage, giving the first game to Gruul. We'll be right back for game 2. Selesnya will do a little sideboarding, seeing that they didn't have any major enchantments of note. We're going to remove the Revoke Existence and the Return to Nature and replace it with a Triumphant Surge and Hydra's Growth. This one is to deal with their high power creatures, and this one is to give us another threat. For game 2 of best of 3, Selesnya will opt to go first. Selesnya draws a Reverent Hoplite, Warbriar Blessing, Hyrax Tower Scout, Forest, Destiny Spinner, Setessan Training, and Plains. This is a bit of a risky keep because it only has 2 lands, but there is a 2-drop and some possible card draw, so we will keep this hand. Gruul draws. Gruul draws a Phoenix of Ash, a Forest, Setessan Training, Incendiary Oracle, Scophos War Leader, and Warbriar Blessing. The only card that we can cast with the 2 forests is Setessan Training and Warbriar Blessing, which means that we can't put it on any of our red creatures, and so I think we have to mulligan this. Gruul's second hand consists of a Mountain, Final Flare, Mountain, Forest, Mountain, and Nylea's Huntmaster. I think that this is too many lands now, and there's nothing that's going to keep us from getting run over. But I think mulliganing down to 5 will probably be a mistake, and so we're going to keep this hand and hope we draw our early game action. We'll take the Mountain and stick it on the bottom. Selesnya will begin by playing a Forest, and Selesnya will pass the turn. Gruul draws, gets a Temple of Abandon. We will play that first. It'll enter the battlefield tap. We'll scry, and we'll take the land and we'll stick it on the bottom, since we have plenty of lands. And then Gruul will pass the turn. Selesnya draws, gets a Daybreak Chimera. We'll play the Plains over here. Then we'll tap the Forest and the Plains and play the Destiny Spinner. This is a 2/3 enchantment human. Creature and enchantment spells you control can't be countered. We can pay 3 and a green for target land you control, becomes an XX elemental creature with trample and haste until end of turn, where X is the number of enchantments you control. It's still land. And then Selesnya will pass the turn. Gruul untaps, draws a Hyrax Tower Scout. We'll play a Forest, and then Gruul will pass the turn. Selesnya untaps, draws a Forest. We'll play the Forest, and then we'll attack with the Destiny Spinner for 2. Gruul has no response. We'll take 2 and go to 18. Selesnya will then spend 3 mana and cast a Hyrax Tower Scout. It'll enter the battlefield and untap the Destiny Spinner, and then Selesnya will pass the turn. Gruul draws, gets a Mountain. We'll play the Mountain. We'll tap 3 mana. We'll cast a Hyrax Tower Scout, and then Gruul will pass the turn. Selesnya untaps, draws a Plains. We'll play the Plains, and then we have some fun that we can have here. So we will tap 2 mana, and then we'll cast Warbriar Blessing. This is an enchantment aura and enchants a creature you control. When it enters the battlefield, enchanted creature fights up to 1 target creature you don't control, and enchanted creature gets +0/+2. That makes this a 3/5, and will attack its cousin on the other side of the battlefield. The Hyrax Tower Scout dies. And seeing that we have a window, we'll go ahead and tap the remaining 2 lands and cast Setessan Training. This is an enchantment aura, and enchants a creature you control, and when it enters the battlefield, draw a card. The enchanted creature gets +1/+0 and has trample. We'll put this on the Destiny Spinner to split up the strength. And then we'll draw a card. This is a Setessan Skirmisher. And then we'll go to combat and we'll attack with both of these creatures for a total of 6 damage. Gruul takes 6 and goes to 12. And Selesnya will pass the turn. Gruul untaps, Draws a Theros Beyond Brawler. We'll play a forest, and then we'll tap out and play the Nylea's Huntmaster. It'll give itself +1 for until the end of the turn, making it a 5/3 until the end of the turn. And then Gruul will pass the turn. Selesnya taps, draws a forest. We'll play the forest, and then I don't think we want to lose a land just yet, but we could attack with the land and the Destiny Spinner, or we can just get a flyer on the battlefield. I think the Hyrax Tower Scout holds back the Nylea's Huntmaster quite well. So I don't want to trade either of these right now, and so we will spend 5 mana and cast the Daybreak Chimera. This is a 3/3 Chimera, and it costs X less to cast, where X is your devotion to white. We have 0 devotion at the moment, and it has flying. And then Selesnya will pass the turn. Gruul untaps, draws a Flummox Cyclops. We'll play a mountain. We'll tap 4, and we'll play the Flummox Cyclops. And then we have a possible blocker, but we can't really attack because the Huntmaster will just get eaten by the enchanted Hyrax Tower Scout, and so we will pass the turn. Selesnya taps, draws a Hydra's Growth. We can either do the Hydra's Growth or we can do the Reverent Hoplite. I think the Hoplite is pretty good value to get us going wide and give us potential chumpers. But before we do any of that, we'll attack with the Daybreak Chimera for 3. Gruul has no blocks, we'll take 3 and go to 9. Then Selesnya will tap 5. And we'll play the Reverent Hoplite. This is a 1/2 human soldier. When it enters the battlefield, create a number of 1/1 white human soldier creature tokens equal to devotion to white. That is 3, so we'll get 3 human soldiers. Here's 3. And then Selesnya will pass the turn. Gruul untaps, draws, gets an Incendiary Oracle. We'll play the Mountain, and then we'll tap out. And we'll play the Theros Beyond Brawler. This is a 4/4 Centaur Warrior. When it enters the battlefield, it fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. We'll fight the Daybreak Chimera to get it out of the air. The Daybreak Chimera dies. And we still don't have any good attacks, so Gruul will pass the turn. Selesnya taps, draws a Taranika, a Crowan Veteran. We will spend 3 mana and we'll cast Taranika, a Crowan Veteran. It's a 3/3 legendary human soldier with vigilance. When it attacks, untap another target creature you control until end of turn. It has base power and toughness 4/4 and gains indestructible, which will work well with little human soldiers, but we'll need a way to get through. We don't have that just yet. We'll tap the 2 force and play a Setessan Skirmisher. It's a 2/1 human warrior. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. And then we will pass the turn. Gruul taps, draws, gets a Skophos War Leader. We don't have any good attacks here, but neither does Selesnya. We'll go ahead and play for 5 mana a Skophos War Leader, and then we will pass the turn. Selesnya taps. We draw a Captivating Unicorn. Maybe the 2-for-1 is a good deal here, so we will tap 5 mana and we'll cast the Captivating Unicorn. This is a 4/4 unicorn. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, tap target creature an opponent controls. We still don't have a good way through my opponent's field, so we will pass the turn. Gruul taps, draws an Oread of Mountain's Blaze. We have some options here. We'll probably want to play our 2 creatures, and then we'll have the ability to Final Flare a dangerous threat, and so that's what we'll do. We'll tap 4 and play the Oread of Mountain's Blaze, as well as the Incendiary Oracle. This is a 2/2 human shaman, and for 1 and a red, it gets +1/+0 until end of turn, and if a creature dealt damage by Incendiary Oracle this turn would die, exile it instead. So we have plenty of bodies as blockers, and a way to pump the Incendiary Oracle. Next turn we'll have some mana that we can fling one of these creatures at whatever is the most dangerous of my opponents, and then we'll pass the turn. Selesnya taps, draws a forest. We'll spend 3 mana to cast Hydra's Growth. This is an enchantment aura. Enchant creature. When Hydra's Growth enters battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on enchanted creature. At the beginning of your upkeep, double the number of +1/+1 counters on enchanted creature. We're going to put on Taranika as a way to start getting through with Taranika, making Taranika a 4/4 for this turn. That'll trigger the Captivating Unicorn, the Setessan Skirmisher. The Setessan Skirmisher will become a 3/2 for this turn, and the Captivating Unicorn will tap the Scophos War Leader. The War Leader becomes tapped. We still don't have a good way through, so Selesnya is going to pass this turn, but I think we're going to start attacking soon. Gruul taps, draws a mountain. Gruul has the mana to pitch the mountain to the Oread of Mountain's Blaze, so we will do so. We'll draw a Mystic Repeal. That is a good way to get rid of an enchantment in a hurry if we need it. But I think we just have to get rid of Taranika before Taranika goes wild, and so we will spend 3 mana and cast Final Flare, sacrificing the Incendiary Oracle and dealing 5 damage to Taranika. Taranika dies, and so does the Hydra's Growth. We still don't have good attacks, although this Mystic Repeal could be able to help in the future, and so we will pass the turn. Selesnya taps, draws a forest. We'll play the forest and begin the flood. We don't have enough enchantments to make a huge creature with the Destiny Spinner, so we are going to pass the turn. Gruul taps, draws a Portent of Betrayal, which is exactly the kind of thing that we want. It'll remove one of my opponent's best creatures, and then we can sacrifice it to the Scophos War Leader. So I think that's what we do. We'll spend 4 mana and cast Portent of Betrayal. It is a sorcery, gain control of a target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature. It gains haste until end of turn and scry 1. We'll go ahead and steal my opponent's Captivating Unicorn. It's ours. And then it looks like we have some real potential for blowouts here. So we'll go ahead and attack with the Theros Beyond Revelers, the Flummox Cyclops, Nylea's Huntmaster, Scophos War Leader, and the Captivating Unicorn. So Selesnya needs some more bodies, so we're going to use the Destiny Spinner and tap 4 mana to turn the forest into a 3/3, and then we'll block the Huntmaster with the Tower Scout. We'll block the War Leader with the forest and 2 human soldiers. We'll block the Theros Beyond Brawler with this trio, and we'll let everything else through for 8 possible damage. In response to the blocks, Gruul will tap the Temple of Banner for green and Mystic Reveal, targeting the Warbriar Blessing to put it on the bottom of Selesnya's deck. And we will tap 1 mountain and sacrifice the Captivating Unicorn to the Scophos War Leader, making it a 5/5 with Menace. The Warbriar Blessing is put on the bottom of the library. This does not change the power and toughness of this because the effect already happened. So we will trade these 3 for the Scophos War Leader. The Hyrax Tower Scout will trade for the Huntmaster, and this group will trade for the Theros Beyond Reveler. We'll take 4 from the Flummox Cyclops to go down to 16, and then the trades will happen. These all die, and these all die. The War Leader, the Huntmaster, and the Brawler all die. And then Gruul will pass the turn. Selesnya taps, draws, gets a Plains. We'll play the Plains. We don't really have a good attack, but we also don't have good blocks, and so we're just going to go ahead and attack since we have a slight life total lead right now. We will attack with the 3/3 Destiny Spinner. Gruul doesn't want to chump, so we'll take 3 and go to 6. And Selesnya will pass the turn. Gruul taps, draws a mountain. We will spend 3 mana and we'll discard the mountain to draw a card. It's a Wolf Willow Haven. We'll spend 2 mana to cast the Wolf Willow Haven, putting it on the mountain. We'll attack with the Flummox Cyclops for 4. Selesnya can afford to take 4, so we'll go down to 12. And Gruul will pass the turn. Selesnya taps, draws, gets another force. We'll play the force because we can make 2/2s with the Destiny Spinner. And then we will attack with the Destiny Spinner. Gruul will allow 1 more hit. We'll go to 3. And then Selesnya will pass the turn. Gruul taps. We draw a Underworld Rage Hound. We will attack with the Flummox Cyclops for 4. Selesnya will take 1 more hit and go down to 8. And then Gruul will pop the Wolf Willow Haven, tapping out to sacrifice this and get a 2/2 green wolf creature token. We'll count this as our wolf. And then we'll go ahead and play the Underworld Ragehound as well. And then Gruul will pass the turn. Selesnya taps and hopes the flood will stop. We draw a Sentinel's Eyes. I don't know if that's enough for us to punch through what my opponent has going on, but we will cast the Sentinel's Eyes. This is a enchanted aura. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has vigilance and has escape. For white, exile 2 other cards from your graveyard. This will make the Destiny Spinner a 4/4. And then we can turn another land into a creature. I think we have to keep it on the defense now because my opponent has so much going on. If we attack with this, we will die on the counterattack. So Selesnya will play the forest to increase the lands that they can turn into creatures, and then Selesnya will pass the turn. Gruul untaps, draws, gets a forest. We're going to spend 3 mana to discard this forest, and we'll draw another card, which is a forest. We have to attack with the Ragehound. If we attack with everybody, and Selesnya can survive the hit, and they can, if they make a 3/3 and then block the Flummox Cyclops, and then block the Underworld Ragehound, then they'll take 3 from the Wolf and the Oread, which means that they can counterattack for the win. So we can't attack with everybody. If we attack with the Ragehound and the Cyclops, then they'll probably eat the Ragehound and take the 4 from the Cyclops, or chump the Cyclops. Either way, it doesn't look good, so we're going to hope that we can use the Oread to draw out of this, and we will attack with the Underworld Ragehound, because we have to. We will go ahead and attack with the Flummox Cyclops as well, because we have chump capacity. Selesnya will spend 4 mana and turn a forest into a 3/3. We will put the Destiny Spinner on the Ragehound and the 3/3 on the Flummox Cyclops, chumping with the forest. Will take no damage and the Ragehound will die. The Ragehound goes down. Gruul at the end of the turn will play the forest, will tap everything, and then will Underworld Ragehound from escaping. We will remove the mountain and the forest and the mountain to make a 4/2. Gruul untaps. I think we might have this. We will spend 3 mana to pitch the forest and draw Final Flare, and I think that probably does this. We will spend 3 mana and sacrifice the Oread of Mountain's Blaze to take down the Destiny Spinner. The Destiny Spinner dies, sending everything to the graveyard. And then Gruul will attack with the Underworld Ragehound, the Flummox Cyclops, and the 2/2 Wolf. We can survive this, but it's not going to be pretty. We will block the Wolf, and then we will use the Sunmane Pegasus' ability to gain lifelink. So we will take 8 damage, but gain 2 to go down to 2 life. Then Gruul will pass the turn. Selesnya taps, draws, gets a forest. We will spend 2 mana to give the Pegasus vigilance and lifelink. We'll attack for 2 in the air, taking us up to 4. The wolf is dead. Gruul will go down to 1. Selesnya will spend 1 mana, escaping the Sentinel's Eyes. We'll exile the forest and the forest to cast Sentinel's Eyes, targeting Sunmane Pegasus. We'll spend 2 more mana to give the Pegasus lifelink and vigilance, so we'll attack with that to gain 3 life to go up to 5, and then Selesnya will pass a turn. Gruul untaps, draws a Skola Grove Dancer. They have to block, so I think we just go ahead and attack again with everybody. Selesnya is forced to block. We'll block and trade with the Underworld Ragehound, and we'll activate again to gain another lifelink. This will give us 3 more life to go to 8, but we'll take 4 from the Flummox Cyclops to go back down to 4. We'll lose the Sunmane Pegasus and the Sentinel's Eyes. Gruul loses the Underworld Ragehound, and then we will spend 4 mana to bring the Underworld Ragehound back, exiling a forest, a Final Flare, and a Mystic Repeal. And then we'll spend 2 more mana to cast the Skola Grove Dancer, and Gruul will pass the turn. Selesnya taps, Draws, gets a Plains, will play the Plains, and then Selesnya will pass the turn. Gruul untaps. Draws, gets an Impending Doom. And then we don't need to cast that, so I think we can just attack for the win. We'll attack with Under Ragehound, the Phloemic Cyclops, and the Scarlet Road Dancer. Selesnya's bluff is called, and we'll take a total of 10 damage, losing all of our life, and Selesnya will lose in straight sets, mostly due to Flood towards the end, but Gruul definitely had the aggressive advantage, and Selesnya couldn't pull out of that, even though it had a ferocious start. So that's my match of Seal Deck for Theros Beyond Death. Let me know what you thought about the games in the comments below. If there were any misplays, let me know so I can learn from your wisdom. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. If you'd like to see more of my videos, you can hit subscribe. This was Refresh. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.